There is literally nothing. I mean, if you're gonna knock over a book and scare the hell out of yourself, the least you could do is not dig your claws into me. It's a horror book too, serves you right. What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative. Let's talk about all of the things that I read this week. First up, I finished Waking Ursa Minor by Helen Rye Peterson. It is book 1 in her epic fantasy, Riverda Rising. Wow, what a debut. But if you held me down and said, Leslie, you have to pick something about this book that you didn't like, the prologue was confusing to me. With that being said, I'm sort of used to prologues not making sense, at least maybe not at the beginning of the book. It makes sense as I progress in the story, or sometimes in the case of Brandon Sanderson, it doesn't make sense until after you've read the book. Then you go back and you read it and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. I hope to have a dedicated review on the channel of that one very soon. Then the next thing that I picked up, read and finished, is Mark Towse's debut novella, Nana. Now guys, I have seen this cover floating around social media for a while now. I saw that my friend Brad Proctor reviewed it. It was on my list. So when the author emailed me out of the blue and was like, hey, would you like to read this and review it for me? I was like, heck yes, it's already on my TBR. This is fantastic. A lot of you guys know I kind of have a limit as far as gross body horror type stuff, as well as sexual content in horror specifically, because it usually gets way out of hand and it's like way overblown. Both of those things exist in this story, but they make sense. They actually add to the story, and I loved it. I loved it. When it's done like the author did in this case, it fits, and like I said, he made it make sense. And I almost said I ate it up, but if you've read this, you probably know why that was a bit revolting to think about. It's titled Nana. It is about a grandma and her posse in New Haven Crescent community. Another one I'm going to do a review on, so keep your eyes open for that. But I really enjoyed this one for many different reasons and elements that I cannot wait to talk about with you. I believe that's all the books that I finished. As far as manga, I'm still working my way through the Dressrosa arc of One Piece. And since I last updated you guys, I read volume 78 through 81. I started 82 this morning, but I didn't finish it yet. I'll finish it this afternoon. I'm really enjoying this arc. When I started, I didn't think I was gonna like it. I was like, okay, this is boring. And to be fair with you, there are a lot of volumes that I ranked like middle of the road. I love battles in this manga, but sometimes they go on over the span of like 5 or 6 volumes, and I'm like, really? Let's move past. But on the other side of that, there was a lot that were really good. I'm loving the story. I'm loving the direction we're going. There's been some reveals that have me very excited to keep going, so I'm really enjoying my time spent with One Piece as always. These characters are so lovable. You cannot help but have a good time when you read the series. So those are all of my completed books. Let's talk short stories. First up, I finished Stephen King's Night Shift. The story in this collection that finished it off is called The Woman in the Room, and what a disappointing last story to end on. I was talking about my lackluster opinion of the short story, and one of the others in my Discord that's participating in this read-along mentioned how it would have been really great if King had ended on One for the Road, which was the second Salem's Lot story, because then we would have started with the Salem's Lot story and ended with the Salem's Lot story and just brought it full circle. That would have been great. The Woman in the Room, there was nothing special about this story, not that I picked up. It was literally about a guy's mom who was sick, terminally ill. She was in pain, she was suffering, and he was grappling with, should he do a mercy killing or not? There was nothing that showed us really in depth how he felt about it. It was just very surface level. It was just a very disappointing story to end on. We're just gonna put that one in timeout over here in the corner. Let's talk about something exciting. Yesterday I read The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, which is included in the Arcanum Unbounded, which is a bind-up of a ton of Cosmere short stories and novellas. I thought it was a short story. It was actually a novella, but it was so good. If you've been kicking around the channel for a while, you might have noticed there's an absence of Brandon Sanderson this last year. It's because I read Elantris last year, the beginning of last year. It took me 3 or 4 months. I just had a hard time. It was so boring until the end. Like the last 50 to 75 pages, that's where that story should have began, in my opinion. At least that's where it began for me. It was exciting. It was great. It was what I expect from Brandon Sanderson. It was his debut novel. I get that. It just totally made me break up with him for a while. The Emperor's Soul has healed that. It was so creative, and it reminded me of something I've always admired about Brandon Sanderson as an author, how he can take fantasy. It is fantasy. It is magic. But he makes it so logical. It's so intricate, and he explains it in a way that I'm able to understand. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I'm like, yes, this magic worked exactly like it should have because they did this, this, and this. I knew the whole process. Found myself smiling hugely while reading it because I'm like, yes, this is the Sanderson I met and discovered when I started his Stormlight Archives last year. This is the Sanderson that I've missed. Now I'm really excited to start Mistborn in a couple of months. And then I noticed that Kate decided to add another Joan Didion essay for this month since the other one was short. So I read 7,000 Romaine, Los Angeles 38. This brief essay is about Howard Hughes, someone I had never heard of until I read this story. I mentioned it in Discord, and of course other people were like, yeah, that's the guy that did this and that and the other. Evidently he was the proprietor of the largest pool of industrial wealth under the absolute control of just one individual. If I remember correctly, I believe I read like way back when this was written, which was, I want to say maybe late 60s, early 70s. He sold TWA for like 546 million. That is still a lot in today's standards, but can you imagine 30, 40 years ago what that was? Obscene. That's what it was. So let's see what else. Oh yes, Zora Neale Hurston. We cannot forget her. I read another one of her nonfiction essays called The Last Slave Ship. Zora Neale Hurston tracked down a 95-year-old man who came over in the last shipment of slaves that was brought on that boat, which he told her sank right off the coast of Alabama, and it was discovered in 2019. But this man, Kedjo Lewis, told Zora all about his tribe that he was from and how another tribe conquered his tribe, captured the people that they didn't murder, and sold them. I found it extremely insightful. Of course, it was made more interesting because Zora Neale Hurston was an anthropologist, so she was able to use both of her fields for writing and anthropology to just really make this account very compelling. Love it. I am loving this collection. I cannot wait to read more. And then I believe the only other piece of short fiction I read was, of course, episode 7 of A Mini Tale from aminitale.com. That is the cosmic fantasy series that I'm reading online, which you can also read for free. Link will be in the description box down below. Episode 7 was the end of a little 4-parter mini arc, and it was so good. I got so many answers for some of the things that I've seen coming forward. We kind of started in the middle. We met Opaline, the Mouseling. We met some of the people who are also under the same curse as he is, blipping around between planet and planet through time and space. And I always wondered, like, how is the author going to pull this off? Like, what was the reasoning? Like, how did this happen? I got the answer to that today, and I thought it was extremely clever. I am so excited to see what is going to happen next. Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. If you love time travel, I think you would love this series. If you love animal companions, well, here's a whole series about animals and other creatures. If you'll notice, each week, each episode has a piece of art that's inspired by that particular story. So they're having a contest that you can enter if you're an artist for the opportunity to be involved in this. Info will be linked in the description box down below. So that takes care of everything that I read. Let's talk about what I'm still reading. I'm going to show you this one. I am not still reading it. It is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I did try the first 3 or 4 chapters of part 3. So that one's being set down indefinitely. Let's talk about something I'm enjoying that I started on the Kindle. I started Basil Broketail by Christopher Rowley. It's the first book and I believe a 7-book series. I can tell you right now, I'm 25% of the way through. I'm going to be continuing the series. This is an older fantasy, came out in August of 1992, and I'm really loving it. Basil Broketail is a battle dragon. And you don't just get to do things because you're a dragon. You have to actually try out, compete. You have to prove yourself to be included in one of the legions to fight. And if you fail, well, then you're relegated to working on a farm, doing grunt work. There is some dark, interesting magic. I love the magic. I love the way that it is used. I'm still learning about a lot of the characters. We're still in the early developmental stage of a lot of them. So I'm not sure, do I have any favorites yet? Kinda. I don't think I'm supposed to like this one particular woman, but I do. From what I've read so far, she's very gray, which is funny because she's called a gray sister. Basically, they're spies and they travel through hell basically, and they do it through these black mirrors. Like, it's so cool. I am really enjoying it. Well, I can't wait to see what I discover today. It's like every time I pick up this book and read a chunk, something really interesting I've never encountered in a book before is presented, and I love that kind of creativity. I love discovering something new, especially in a fantasy book. I've read so much fantasy in my life, so I love getting surprised. So that takes care of everything I'm currently reading. That's just the one book. We're right here at the tail end of the month, so that means I can dig into my March TBR. I'm gonna go with Stephen King and Richard Chizmar's novella, Gwendy's Button Box. The third and final book came out recently in hardback, Wendy's Final Task. The paperback will be out in May, which is why I'm just now starting it. I wanted to time it with the paperback release because I like the paperback. I think the paperbacks have a much nicer cover. Okay, this one is illustrated. I love that. I also love the layout. Like, that just makes it more interesting to me. So I'm excited to read this one. So it's probably going to be the first one I pick up. As far as after that, I don't know. I've got some really great selections lined up for March that I am excited about. And that will take care of all of the things that I read, what I'm still reading, and what I plan to read next. How about you guys? Did you read anything that just knocked your socks off this week? Anything you're excited about starting in the month of March? Any new releases? I think the only new release coming out in March that I know about that I'm excited for is they are finally putting in print for the first time all of these short stories for the Expanse series. Previously, you could only get those on Kindle. I've been collecting them here and there, so I'm excited to get that. I want to say it's called Memory of Light, or maybe it's just Memory Light. I'll put a picture up here for you to take a quick gander at it. Guys, thank you so much for dropping by and seeing what is going on in my little corner of the world of reading. I hope your morning has gotten off to a wonderful start. I hope you have a great weekend planned. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.